Joining me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, he covers the NFL for the Sporting News. Vinnie Iyer joins us as all guests appear on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Vinnie, how you doing on this Monday night?
Good. Thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on. So before we get to the Eagles, I got to ask your impressions first of the big story of the day. The New England Patriots have acquired Josh Gordon. Talk about a crazy series of events, from everything we saw on Hard Knocks with Josh Gordon to the release from the press release from the Browns on late Saturday night to all the information that come out, and now he's going to Foxborough. Just give me your impressions of this situation, and what your expectations are for Gordon with the Patriots.
Yeah, I think my expectation is right now he's healthy. He's ready to play. I think the question is going to be, how long does it take him to get into the system, get into the flow of the offense, buy into the meetings and do all that? That's really the only wild card here. In terms of his physical ability, we saw that there's plenty of that still left. And with him, he's just such a good, explosive receiver that there's not much you need to do there. He can outrun guys, get downfield, and make some plays while he's completely learning this offense. They might have a limited package of plays for him at first, but I don't think there's any reason that they should hold him back in this offense, because he's a guy that can really put them over the top. You saw against Jacksonville, there's a team out there that can match up well against them still and contain them when it comes down to the playoffs. But you look at around the AFC, the Steelers can score a lot. The Jaguars have proved they can score more. The Chiefs have an explosive offense coming out of the gate. It's going to be won by scoring a lot of points and having different guys who can create matchup problems, and Josh Gordon does just that for the Patriots.
There's been a perception of the Browns organization that because it's been a losing culture, it's been an organization that has had dysfunction over the years, an organization that has had a lot of instability. There's conjecture that maybe Gordon going to the Patriots, that type of structure, that type of stability, may be good for someone like him. Do you believe that is true?
Well, I think on paper it looks very good for him in terms of buying in. He's not. I think there's a lot of different comparisons out there. Some people turn out Chad Johnson and Albert Haynesworth, who are disasters, but they were kind of over the hill, beyond their chances, had some issues that were beyond what Josh Gordon has. And physically, in terms of what he can offer, he offers a lot more than they could. Then again, he's not also the trade for Randy Moss in 2007 at the draft when the Raiders kind of get up there. I think he's going to be his own case study here. For now, the Patriots saw a chance on a dynamic player that they have faith in just by making this trade and spending a fifth-round pick. So they have faith in that it can be a contributor to them right away. So I don't think they make this move just as a more experimental move. I think Gordon is going to be a good contributor for them, but given the framework of this offense, he can just make a few big plays here and there, and that would be a big addition right away.
Speaking of additions, the news came out earlier today. The Eagles announced it first on their Twitter account, but then Doug Peterson walked up to the podium and announced it, confirming Carson Wentz has been cleared for contact. He will start Week 3. We know this is an offense that is going to be without Mike Wallace. He's got the broken tibia. Alshon Jeffrey probably won't be back for Week 3, maybe not even Week 4. So what are your expectations for Carson Wentz, who has seen no reps in the preseason? We haven't seen him since December of last year. How much of Carson Wentz do you think we're going to see, and how much of an impact do you feel he can have on this offense?
Well, I think he can have a big impact because of all the other elements he can bring to the table, his mobility, his just sheer playmaking ability, even when things are breaking down. That's going to be a factor as well. And then he's just a better talent overall than Nick Foles. Nick Foles is a hot and cold guy, boom or bust from any given week, but Carson Wentz is that steady guy. He's a leader that you can trust, and he's going to put it all out there, be tough, and be consistent for you week in and week out. So that's the difference. You're going to get that consistency that this offense has kind of been lacking. He has a great chemistry with Zach Ertz, where Ertz has been kind of limited here in the first couple games. I think you'll see that rev up here, especially with Jeffrey out again. Nelson Aguilar and Wentz also connected well. So that's going to help those two guys. They are hurting at wide receiver with Mike Wallace going down, and they're going to have to worry about that. But Corey Clement was also a big factor when Wentz was healthy last year. With Derek Sproles hurting, I figure a lot of the offense is going to go through Ertz, Aguilar, and Clement at this point. I really like it. The Colts matchup is very good. Maybe Frank Reich will use some of his knowledge there to help know what he's going to get from a healthy Carson Wentz. But I think overall, Frank Reich can't do anything about the Colts' defensive deficiency. So it's a good spot to get Carson Wentz back and producing well.
I've been having conversations with a lot of people. I want to ask your opinion about this, about the fact that, in my perspective, the majority of NFL quarterbacks, they're hyper-dependent on the people around them. Look at a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's got Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, and Godwin down there with the Bucs. He plays well. When he was in Houston, he had Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins. He played well that season. I feel like a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, they're just hyper-dependent on what is around them for them to be able to execute. Whereas there's a handful of quarterbacks who could actually elevate their team. People like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. Is Carson Wentz the type of quarterback that you believe that can elevate?
Yeah, I think he can in different ways because of the way he moves around and just that sheer determination and will of trying to lift players around him and do anything he can to win. Sometimes that can be a little scary because you don't want him to throw his body out there and get hurt. I think you put him in that category maybe with Cam Newton and Russell Wilson. It's not necessarily just the guys who are going to take off and run, but he plays alive when things are dead. If the offensive line, which he always has good support from, but if it breaks down at any point, he can still make a play out of nothing. So I think the Eagles' offense is well designed for him, and I think in a sense they want him to maybe run less, but I think in a way that's going to be a big asset here as they flip from Foles.
You mentioned Nelson Aguilar earlier. This is a guy who was a first-round pick his first 2 years in the league. I mean, he was just tough to watch. He had trouble catching the ball. He had trouble running routes. You know, he was one of the worst receivers in the NFL in terms of drops per target. Last year, he just had an incredible season in the slot. And in these first 2 games this season, he's already has 16 catches and a touchdown. And he's a guy who's really evolved. What are your impressions of him now in his 4th season in the NFL, seeing how far he has come?
Well, he just needed to be in the right offense, in the right role, and he found it there. Definitely working in that slot and having the pressure off not to be that number one receiver is very helpful, and not be having that pressure. And Alshon Jeffrey right now is the number one when he comes back, and he should be back here in a few weeks. But Nelson Aguilar has found that he's valuable to the offense. He doesn't need that outside guy to draw attention to be productive. He's really found his niche there in the red zone as well to score from that slot position. So sometimes it's just finding the right system, finding the coach that knows to best use your talent. Don't put pressure on you. I think earlier maybe they thought he was a guy that they maybe could stretch the field with at times in the dark ages of where the Eagles' offense was at one point, but he's just been used better in this offense. And I think having the offensive line and Zach Ertz and Jeffrey and things that can create things open for Aguilar's talents have helped, and now you have the quarterbacks as well to match.
Vinnie Iyer joining us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN, writer for the Sporting News. Looking at the NFL as a whole a little bit, I know last night's game was maybe not appealing aesthetically, and for fantasy football people, there were definitely people who were frustrated with some of the results, but I think one of the biggest takeaways I took from last night's game is that despite all the money the Giants gave Nate Solder and the fact that they invested a second-round pick in Hernandez, that offensive line is still a problem with the Giants. And Eli Manning, there's only so much a guy can do when he's flat on his back.
Yeah, I wrote this when I was breaking down that offensive line. I think the one thing it was built to do, and Nate Solder, looking at what he did last season for the Patriots, and Will Hernandez, what his profile was to a run block. But that doesn't always work when you're trailing and you're beyond the sticks. And I think they have to realize what kind of offense they have. And Barkley did get the ball a lot on short dump-offs. He was pretty much getting extended handoffs on a regular basis in that game. But this line is built to go downhill and take pressure off them. They're not supposed to go back on their heels and try to block it that way. And I think the Giants will maybe make some adjustments there with the way they operate this line. I thought they needed to consistently keep Rhett Ellison in there as an extra blocker to help there in both aspects. But I think the missed opportunity there was really trying to hunker down and get that running game going and stick to it. And they did a little bit of that in Jacksonville, and you got that long run from Saquon Barkley against the Jaguars in week 1. But I think it's a team that really needs to think about running 20, 25 times and be dedicated to it. In a game like last night, it wasn't too far out of hand until that Ezekiel Elliott run. So if you're in the game for a while, I think you have to try to be that heavy running team. And I know you have Odell Beckham Jr. and all that, but he will come and make the big plays once you have everything else going.
Speaking of the big plays, outside of the one long pass to Tavon Austin, the Cowboys offense really didn't do that much overall, and it was mostly their defense that got them that win last night. Do you expect to see the same type of inconsistencies from the Cowboys offense? Because I think most teams, after seeing what Dak did yesterday, they're going to say, okay, they're going to do a lot of RPO. We're going to be prepared for that moving forward.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they didn't have more interest in Josh Gordon. I thought they would be a team that really needed him and could have really changed the way their season went. But for some reason, they didn't have a lot of interest, which intrigues me because I look at the box score and look at the way they played. Allen Hurns and Michael Gallup, two guys that they have a lot of expectations for to be key parts of this offense, are doing nothing. When you have that Tavon Austin play was for 64 yards and it holds up there as your leading receiver, that's got some problems there in the passing game. So I'm just surprised they haven't been a little bit more creative or having been so adamant not getting receiver help away from Dez Bryant. And I think they're trying to be this run team that's heavy with Prescott and Elliott and then take a few shots downfield. They want to occasionally mix it in to get that going. So this is the identity they want. I think they realize that their defense, 2 straight games has been very good here. They can hold opponents under 20. So their goal with their offense is just to score 20 points maybe and get away with victories. It's very hard to do in the NFL with that because you're going to run into some high-scoring, high-powered offenses where you're going to have to score into the 30s. But for now, this is the formula that they feel best and most comfortable winning with.
Speaking of high-powered offenses, Pat Mahomes was incredible yesterday. But for me, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the young man, he's had a very impressive first 2 games this year. He's setting all kinds of NFL records, putting him in such great company. But that Steelers defense, Vinny, looked horrible. I mean, shoddy tackling, guys not covering properly. You know, for a team with a head coach with a defensive background of Mike Tomlin, that defense has regressed infinitely, and I thought they would be at least a little better this year. You know, can they turn that defense around in time? Because maybe if they give up 2 less touchdowns, they actually have a chance to win that game.
Well, I think the thing about the Steelers defense, it's built more to close teams out versus to handle teams that are going at them at the get-go and can move the ball around with pace and have balanced explosiveness. That's going to be really hard for them. They're built to rush the passer when you're in predictable situations, you're playing from behind, and you know what the calls are going to be. But the Chiefs are unpredictable. They could do anything they wanted, throw to the tight end, throw downfield, throw to Kareem Hunt, just really mix it up. And now they're not going to face an offense like that every week, but then you look here in week 3, suddenly facing the Buccaneers, which we didn't think that was going to be much of a game, but here they are, 2-0 Bucks. The Steelers are 0-1-1, and the Bucks are scoring at will, and the Steelers can't stop anyone. So that's going to be a big, big matchup right there. And a Bucks team that, again, has its own defensive leaks. But the Steelers, I think that was going to be the bigger problem. It was not going to be Le'Veon Bell was not there. It was going to be more that Ryan Shazier is not there and he's not coming back, and that is going to be something that lingers over this Pittsburgh team throughout the season.
Couple more for you. Vinnie Iyer joining us, the World Wakanda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. The Jaguars beat the Patriots, and you could argue Blake Bortles had the best game of his career yesterday afternoon. I mean, yeah, Keelan Cole had that great catch on the sideline, which I still think that may actually be better than the Odell Beckham catch. But overall, Blake had an excellent game yesterday, Vinny. You know, is this kind of what we can expect from Bortles in his evolution, and maybe at this point in his career he can be an effective passer and help push a team downfield offensively?
Well, you mentioned quarterbacks that are dependent on people, and most quarterbacks are dependent because there's only those few special guys that you mentioned can carry a team. Even if things are breaking down, no one's protecting, no one's getting open, he's going to find somebody. But Blake Bortles, they know what he is, and I think they've realized the kind of receivers they need. Big targets that can play off the running game, a couple speed guys on the outside, really play off the threat. And it really helps to have an offensive line that's going to keep you upright and clean the entire game. And you're a mobile quarterback yourself where you can get rolled out and move around and get to the receivers that you want to get open. So I think you look at it, it's a good diverse offense. It's an interesting offense in terms of not having maybe the dominant number one receiver, but you have the dominant running back. And when you have a running game and an offensive line and a way to spread the field around to a bunch of guys that can do similar things that are versatile in your offense, you're going to have success. And Blake Bortles, I kind of compare to a point guard. He's got a lot of good things around him. All he has to do is distribute here and play off the running game, and he's going to be successful.
So that the second straight week we have a tie yesterday between the Packers and the Vikings. Who do you think that tie is more of a negative over? Is that more of a negative for the Vikings or more of a negative for the Packers?
Well, I think anytime you're in a home series, you want to get the win. So the Vikings get out of there with a tie. That's, I think, a detriment to the Packers because that's a game they wanted to win outright. Now they have to go into Minnesota and try to win or get a tie there as well to really make sure that they deadlock that or they've lost that series with them. So I think the Packers are probably hurting themselves more because they had the lead late in the game. I know the Vikings could have won there at the very end on a field goal, but the Packers, I think, are going to kick themselves a little bit more for having that lead and how the play transpired with Clay Matthews looking like they had won the game, and then things went completely in the other direction.
At 2-0, are the Broncos a playoff team?
I don't see it right now, and I know people are saying Case Keenum came in there and shored up quarterback. I don't see that particularly either. I think he's been very sloppy with the football here the first two games. They were lucky, I think, to escape both games of victory. Their running game looks pretty good. Their defense looks good at times as well, but they struggled a little bit with the Seahawks passing game. They spotted the Raiders to a nice lead there before they could catch up and win. So right now there's a lot to like about the Broncos, but they were 2-0 last year. We know how that ended. They ended up 5-11. So I'm not buying in quite yet. I think they're very similar to last year's team so far. Keenum is doing a good job of getting the ball to the wide receivers, but the jury's still out on the complete team, and I got to see a lot more before I believe in them at 2-0 because I look at the Chiefs 2-0, it's in a completely different stratosphere than what the Broncos are doing at 2-0.
Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News has been my guest here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Give him a follow on Twitter at Vinnie Iyer. That Iyer is spelled I-Y-E-R. Vinnie, appreciate the time on a Monday night and enjoy the game tonight.
All right, thanks a lot, Josh.